What is up, everybody? Welcome to Pub Sports Radio and welcome to Stat Diggers. We have UFC Vegas 53, and we have Rob Font going against Marlon Vera. And should be an interesting card. We have Sherman Romanov back on the card. Kind of a mess that happened last night, but that's back on. We have some fun fights scattered throughout, and then the main event should be a very fun fight. I'm here as always with Weezy. What is up, Weezy? How you doing? You looking forward to this card?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be all right, I guess. You know, this is not exactly the kind of one where you just start having heart palpitations and being like, I'm praying that nobody goes out here. There are some good fights on this card. There are some lower level fights on this card as well. But we say it every damn week, Brady. The good cards are the ones that we stack cash tickets like flapjacks on. We got to find some angles. We got to find some spots here. And if we make money on this card, it will hold a fond place in our memory as a winning night. And that's the best that we can ask for as professional gamblers, my friend.
Yes, sir. Like I'm going to be very light on this card. Like there are some sketchy fights. It is not getting any sketchier than Bad Figgy going against Daniel Da Silva. Gina Mazzani, Shannon Young's on the card as well. Just some other sketchy fights. But, as always, we got fights. Can't complain. Better than a week off, I'd say. So before we get started, we're going to quickly recap a crazy card that happened last night. We started off the card with a big upset. Shout out to Bootsy. Bootsy was all over Mike Jackson, 7-1, 8-1 dog. Bootsy was the only person out there that I know of that called Mike Jackson there. But yeah, crazy call there. We'll quickly recap our bets. I'll start off. I'm not going to go through everything. I had a million bets, but my biggest bets, I had 2.5 units on the fight doesn't go for Lainesse Andrade. I also added a unit onto that. 3.5 units on that. Ended in the first round there. Now I had 4.75 units total on some Jordan Wright, Marc-Andre Barriault violence. And not only that, I had probably my highest staked bet of the year. And that was if Jordan Wright won a decision, I was going to come on here today and shave my ass. Jordan Wright actually went out there with a different game plan. He went out there trying to take down Marc-Andre Barriault, which kind of surprised me. He ended up getting submitted. So I was able to cash my fight doesn't go to decision. I was able to cash my under 2.5. But I did not cash my fight ends in KO, but still hit 2 out of 3 bets on that. I also had 2.5 units on the Iori. Cameron Else fight doesn't go to decision. And then I had some Pedro violence. I had it by knockout. I had the fight doesn't go to decision in a parlay with Romanov under 1.5. So that pushed there, was able to cash that fight doesn't go. The losses were Prochnio Linz under 2.5 rounds. Thought Linz had him in that second round and even in that third round. Just instead of knocking him out, he kind of clinched up. Ugly fight there. I also had a loss on the Parsons Elder fight doesn't go. I do not know how that did not finish. That arm triangle was, sunk in, multiple times. He got him in mount, took his back, all the good stuff. Could not get the finish. And then other than that, I had a couple sprinkles here and there. But yeah, it was a good night. Plus 1.76 units. Felt like it should have been a bigger night if that Ike fight would have, or if that Marcin Prochnio fight would have finished, or if that Parsons fight would have finished. Would have been a much bigger night, but on a card like that, like a weird, sketchy, crazy card, I was really happy with how the night went, and I felt like all my reads were on point. I lost the fight ends in KO with Marc-Andre Barriault. Barriault gets his first submission win. I'm fine with that. I lost the Prochnio Linz under 2.5. I thought it was very close to finishing. I'm fine with that read. And then I lost the Parsons fight doesn't go decision. I lost that. I was fine with that read. So I thought all the reads were on point, and I'm happy about that as well. So good night. Uncle Weezy, how was your night last night?
I had a good one. I wound up over 3 units, like 3.23 units or something like that on the night. I cashed on the Preston Parsons money line. I got him at minus 120, put 1.2 units on that, cashed that. I lost on the Montana De La Rosa money line. I had 0.75 units on that at plus 165. Macy looked great. Really controlled the fight in the clinch. Really kind of, that was the place where I felt like she was going to be at the safest, actually, was in the clinch with Montana's back against the cage. And man, she fought a perfect game plan and really won that fight clearly. So good on Macy Barber there. I had a 2.1 units on the Wright Barriault fight doesn't go to decision. That cashed. I had 1.7 units on the Quillang Else fight doesn't go to decision. That cashed easily. Aori Quillang was my ass shaving of the week. He made it look absolutely easy. And I also had a win on another violence bet. What was it?
Lainesse Andrade under 2.5.
Yes, and that was a great one because, when I went and I looked at the stats, I wanted to bet that fight doesn't go to decision at minus 200, but then I looked and, Andrade had never had a finish past the second round. Lemos had never had a finish past the second round. So I figured, why not turn minus 200 into plus 135 and just go from fight doesn't go to decision down to the under 2.5, which included both of their best finishing conditions. Put a unit on it, that was plus 1.35 units. So yeah, man, I'm up over 20 units on the year. I've had 4 losing weeks this year, and each one of those weeks, Brady, I lost less than 1 unit. So it's really been a fantastic 2022 for me so far, and I'm really hoping to keep it going here. And I know that this show is a real big part of it because there's something about waking up on Sunday and knowing that there's work to do and that we have got to get ready, by 6:15 Central Time in order to have a look at all these fights, get the early jump on these bookies and try and get these lines before they move. Stat Figures is a big part of our success this year.
Yeah, nothing motivates you more than waking up early on a Sunday and then researching some Jake Collier under Arlovski. I know that gets me pumped up and ready to go. Before we get started, as always, guys, if you guys can please leave a like on the video, it does help us out here a ton. Subscribe to Pub Sports Radio as well. Let us shout out the chat, and then we'll get started. We got F. Carrillo, the first one in the chat, hanging out. What is up, F. Carrillo? We got Mushroom in the chat as well. Brandon talking about Keith Peterson. Yeah, I don't know what Keith Peterson was waiting for in that else fight. And then there was another fight he was reffing, which terrified me. Which fight was Keith Peterson reffing? Was it the main event? Yeah, I think it was.
He was reffing the main event. We both had violence bets. I texted you. I was like, come on, man. Are you kidding me? This guy almost got Cameron Else killed. Collier at his back, just like 50 unanswered strikes, and he's over there smoking a Marlboro Red, like 15 minutes. So it was unbelievable.
It's
Keith
terrible,
Peterson
dude.
is going to get someone killed in there, man.
And I went back and watched some other fights on this card today, and there's a lot of fights where Keith Peterson is just kind of shit in the bed in terms of stoppages. So I don't know. The dude's drunk all the time. We have Mark Schillingberg in the chat. We got Tim, who, by the way, Tim hit that Claudio Poyas by knee bar at 50-1. He put $10 on it to win 550. I've never seen anything like that. That was awesome, Tim. Good hit there. We got Lou Betcha in the chat as well. We have the Gaming Wolf. We got Jason. We got Sean hanging out. And by the way, Sean had a very good call on Claudio Poyas. He was all over him. I picked him last week, but I did not have the confidence that Sean did. So shout out to you, Sean. We got free UFC bet picks in the chat as well. We got Nick. We got Jay in the chat. We got Zach as well. And Zach saying violence was definitely the answer. And yeah, the violence definitely delivered. Capper comparisons in the chat. Papa Chuck. Tyler hanging out. We got Troy. We got DXJC. We got Thomas, who had a 10-unit bet, something like that, on the under in the Jordan Wright fight. So shout out to you, Thomas. Big bet there. Glad you can cash that. We got Kyle Marley. What is up, Kyle? We got Angelo in the chat. Roy. The chat is flying by here. Thank you all for hanging out. Came in as well. If I missed you guys, I'm sorry. But Couch Warrior, I see you in there as well. I say we get into it. I say we get right into it, Weezy. So, stop shitting on Key. He deserves it. Did you watch the Cameron Else fight? He deserves it. He could have had him killed.
Dude, you know what I mean? And if Clay Guida felt the effects of the 50 unanswered strikes that he took against Santos, it surely showed up this week against Puellis. And, and shout out Sean V. There's a lot of people that come here on Sunday talking about how we got something wrong and they got something right, but nobody ever heard them say it. This guy was telling us during Best Bet while we were all saying we like Guida, you guys are wrong. Puellis is going to win this by sub. And he was absolutely right. He called it. It's a great call there for Sean V.
Yeah, for sure. Got to give people credit where it's due. And a lot of people seem to do really well. And I do notice that. And I do want to shout him out for sure. So I say we get into it. Shea Sherman, Alexander Romanov. If you are a DFS player, this was a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. You have the best play on the slate, Alexander Romanov, and out of nowhere, they say a fight's off. And I hear that a fight's off, and I'm like, oh no, what could it be? And then it's this fight, which I had a bet on this fight. I had Romanov in a ton of lineups. I wanted to see Chase Sherman get his ass beat in the first round, and none of that happened. And then all of a sudden, they're putting it back on the card. Weezy, did you hear what was wrong with Sherman? Did he have diarrhea or something? What was up with him?
I have no idea what happened. I really don't. I was on the Pub Sports live stream, so I don't have the sound down on when I'm watching the fights, and they just come on and say Chase Sherman, isn't fighting, and it's like, what are they talking about? Because But of course, I had Romanov in all my lineups, and I'm like, oh, it's going to be one of these weeks, It's all the game theory players had to have cleaned up yesterday, man. Having no Dean Barry, having no Romanov, they probably would have owned guys like Mike Jackson, who was optimal, crazy stuff. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what happened, dude. Maybe somebody in the chat can enlighten us, because I just don't know what happened there.
I mean, yeah, it would make sense that, Sherman would, get sick and, pull out of the fight in general, but it doesn't really make sense to me that they'd book it the next week. So it's going to happen. I hope so. Hopefully another thing does not happen like that again, because, people are putting their money into Alexander Romanov on their bets and DraftKings and all the good stuff. And, once the card starts, that kind of sucks. So hopefully it's on. It should be on. But we have Chase Sherman, who's 32 years old, 6'4", 78-inch reach. Romanov, 31 years old, 6'2", with a 75-inch reach. Romanov 1 year younger. Romanov's going to be at a 2-inch height disadvantage and a 3-inch reach disadvantage as well. Chase Sherman 2-3 in his last 5 fights. Last time out, he had a submission loss against Fat Collier in the first round. Prior to that, he did lose a decision to Parker Porter. Prior to that, he did lose a decision to Andrei Arlovski. Prior to that, he knocked out Ike Villanueva and then knocked out Rashawn Jackson. Alexander Romanov, 5-0 in his last 5 fights. He made his debut against Roy Martinez, won that fight by submission, then submitted Marcos Rogerio de Lima, then had that decision win against Juan Espino, and then knocked out Jared Vandera in his last fight. So there's not much to say. Romanov was like minus 2,500 last time I checked for last week, and I'm assuming the line's going to be around the same. I think Romanov has a very, easy path to victory in terms of getting this fight down to the mat. Sherman takedown defense is very good actually, but his ground game is just not there. Kind of look like a fish out of water on the mat against Jake Collier. And if Jake Collier is making you look like a fish out of water, Romanov should take you down. He's going to smash you. He's going to submit you. I think Romanov smashes him in the first round. On top of that, somebody mentioned in the chat, Romanov came in like 20, 25 pounds lighter. He looks to be in the best shape of his entire career. Maybe that helps him. It should help him in this fight. But yeah, I think it takes down Sherman, smashes him. Romanov round 1 finish. But if we talked about it on best bet, we like this fight is unbettable. There's nothing that sticks out from a betting perspective. Romanov should win, but as we learned last week, and we talked about it last week, parlaying like minus 1,500s, minus 1,600s, there's just it adds no value, first of all, and people can slip on a banana peel, right? Like Dean Barry can, gouge your eye out, kick you in the nuts, and that can turn into a losing ticket and kill a lot of parlays. So minus 2,500, it adds no value to the parlays. He should win, but unbettable. Give me Romanov to shave ass here for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I had Aori Quilang as my ass shaving of the week last week, but I had this as my ass shaving of the year. I mean, this is a mismatch, I mean, when you see a guy like Collier, who's never known for getting takedowns, and then getting top control and then getting submissions, I mean, you just don't see him doing that. Now you got a guy that you do see doing that. You got a guy who's taking high-level guys, putting his forearm on their throat, and then they're sleeping 4 seconds later. I mean, that's terrifying. This guy Romanov is so much better than Chase Sherman. It is a bettable fight because you can bet Chase Sherman. I had a bet on Chase Sherman last week. I said, I'm going to put 0.1 units on the 3rd round prop at plus 5,500. And guess what? Anybody that calls me stupid can go right ahead and do that. But there were a lot of people parlaying Dean Barry last week at minus 1,250. And how did that work out for you? You don't parlay guys when they're at, an over 95% implied probability. It does you no good. It adds no value to your parlay. The only thing that can happen is it can go wrong. So this one can go wrong. I guess you can bet Chase Sherman if you feel like, and just say, hey, look, it's a banana peel situation. We just saw a banana peel last week. You remember Maria Agapova. You remember Devontae Smith against his old buddy. And I've always said, Romanov right now on Bet Online is minus 2,300. Well, if you're one of these guys who fights for your life and maybe you don't feel like doing it anymore, what better retirement plan than throwing a fight when your opponent is 10-1 and putting your whole check on it? Don't think it wouldn't happen. It's happened before. It's a dirty sport sometimes, So look, keep your money away from this fight unless you're trying to put a little bit of milk money on Chase Sherman here just in case he shocks the world. But other than that, this is a horrible stylistic matchup for Chase. He signed to take this fight so that he could get 3 more professional fights at this level and get paid for them. And he's going to take this ass shaving first, and it's going to be a bad one.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, they actually opened up Romanov at minus 2,300. So that even probably gets wider, throughout the week, which is just crazy. But, Sherman opened up plus 1,100. And the over under is set at 1.5 rounds. The over 1.5 is plus 235. The under 1.5 is minus 295. I think the under does hit, but that is a very chalky price to pay. And other than that, no props are out yet. But yeah, Romanov should cruise. We should move on to the next fight. And we have Carlos Candelario going against Ashiro Terra. We have Candelario, who is 30 years old, 5'8", with a 68-inch reach. Tashiro, he is 22 years old, 5'7". Not sure on the reach there. But Candelario, he is 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Had that decision win on the Contender Series, did not get signed. I think he had another win after that by decision. And then he comes back on the Contender Series and then loses a split decision in a very close fight there. Terra, he is 5-0 in his last 5 fights. Obviously, he is undefeated. And yeah, kind of an interesting fight here. We have Terra, who is, first of all, super young. This guy's 22 years old. He has not fought the best competition, but I do like what I see from the guy. The striking's okay, but what I really like is the wrestling is okay, but the grappling really, really impressed me. This guy is slick on the mat. When he gets you down, he can take your back, and I do like that. And on top of that, I like the cardio as well. He can grapple and he can do it for 3 rounds, and I think that does stick out. And I like that for him in this matchup in particular. Candelario, on his first Contender Series fight, he fought Candido, who was able to get him down a couple times, and he had success in terms of able to survive on the mat against a very dangerous Candido there. But as the fight went on, Candido gassed out in that first round, but Candido was still able to get him down, I think, in that second and third as well. So that wasn't the best look. Candido was able to take his back as well. He got into mount at some point. And then even in the Victor fight on his last fight in the Contender Series, Victor at one point took his back as well. So, Candelario is giving up dominant positions at times. He is giving up mount. He's giving up his back. And I feel like, that's probably why Terra is such a big favorite here. But yeah, this is another sketchy fight. There's a ton of sketchy fights on this card. This is definitely one of them. Do you really want to trust a 22-year-old prospect who has not fought the best competition? I believe this is going to be the first fight for him in the United States as well, which is something to mention. Do you really want to trust this guy at minus 300 just about? I know I don't, but I do think he has all the tools to win. I think the wrestling's there. I hate Candelario's takedown defense. I think the grappling's there for Terra, and I think the cardio is there as well. He's going to have the cardio advantage. So I like Terra here, but I'm not running to the window to lay minus 300, and this will be a fight that I'm ultimately passing on. Weezy, it should be a fun fight here. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I went and I watched all the tape that was available on both of these guys. There's similar in experience numbers here. To Tyra, 1 more fight. Candelario, 23 more minutes in the cage. Candelario 2 times in the UFC cage, while Tyra is going to be making his debut here. Candelario taken down 12 times in 23 attempts, so showing sub 50% takedown defense. The control time numbers are not correct because the fight against Ronaldo Candido, we did not get control time stats from that fight. And Candido did pile up a good amount of control time against Candelario there. But what's important about this fight is if you go and you watch the tape on Tyra, right, he's okay in the striking. His wrestling is okay, but he's a great grappler. And he's going to try to get to your back. He can do it standing. He can do it if you overextend on your strikes, or he could take you down and get to your back that way as well. But once he gets on your back, he's going to stay there. He does go for submissions, but he really does do a fantastic job of not giving up position in order to get those submission attempts. So I really like Tyra's grappling. But we've seen Candelario fight top-notch grapplers before and be put in bad positions by them, but he's never even really close to getting submitted, and then he winds up reversing positions. And when he does, he drops some serious ground and pound here. So this line looks just entirely too wide for me. I don't know what to think of these wins from Tatsuro Taira. You look at these names like Alfredo Muaid, Ryuka Fukuda, Yoshiro Maeda, Kiyotaka Shimizu, Jared Almazan. These are Japanese regional scene guys that are journeymen, really. So it's hard to know what's going to happen when you got a guy like Candelario who's come in here and he's fought Altamirano, he's fought Restrepo twice, he's fought Ronaldo Candido, and shown that he can swim on the ground with some guys who are high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts. So it's interesting. I think the line's entirely too wide. I don't think Taira's good everywhere. I think he's really good in the grappling, but the striking is just okay. The wrestling is just okay. So I don't know if he's going to be able to get this fight even to the ground where he wants it, even though Candelario hasn't shown great takedown defense yet. What is the wrestling like in Japan? I mean, just because you're taking down Japanese dudes that really only know judo, it doesn't mean that your freestyle wrestling, your Greco-Roman wrestling is going to translate at the UFC level when you come over here and you fight some of these guys that have been in wrestling rooms since they were 6-7 years old. So the line just feels entirely too wide to me, Brady. I might be putting a bet on Candelario here at plus 275. If Taira makes any mistakes, if he winds up on bottom, I think he's going to lose minutes on the feet. I think he's going to lose minutes if he gets reversed or taken down. I think his best chance is to get this fight to the ground, get the back early, and work for submissions and win minutes that way.
Yeah, I can't bet this fight. I mean, the line is crazy. Like, yeah, he is actually. Let me double check. Yeah, so he is the biggest favorite on the entire card. A 22-year-old, Tashiro Taira, the biggest favorite on the card. He opened up minus 260. He's currently minus 320. Carlos Candelario opened up plus 220. He's currently plus 270. Yeah, I mean, I can't. There's no way I can get there at minus 300. There is absolutely no way. The over-under set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 is minus 115. Under 2.5 round is minus 115. I actually don't hate the over, but it's probably a fight I'm going to just pass on in general. I think it's a solid matchup for Taira, unless he's like, I don't know, a complete fraud, which he looks good. I will say there's some fights where he doesn't go to his wrestling as much as he really should. So maybe he comes in here and doesn't do that. But as long as he comes in here with a good game plan, Candelario's takedown defense is not held up. Candelario's cardio is not held up as well. Taira should win this fight, but minus 300 on a guy making his debut, 22 years old, not the best competition. First fight in the U.S. It's sketchy, dude.
It's very sketchy. And like I say, I mean, he's only 22 years old. So, he's going to be improving. And he looks good. I mean, like, dude, the reason he's minus 320 is he looks the part against these guys that he's fighting in Shoot-To. He looks calm, cool, collected. His grappling transitions are really fun to watch. And he's not making dumb mistakes that you would expect some 22-year-olds to make. They get on somebody's back and they think, oh, I got to finish this now. He's not doing that. He's really taking his time on the ground. It's just that this is a step up. It's definitely a step up. You can't just fight these guys in Japan who have 14 draws on their record. They all do for some reason. It's weird things that are going on over there sometimes in the regional scene over there, and you just don't know if the level of competition is going to be holding up, when you come over here to the States and you fight in the UFC. So yeah, it feels wide, but I get it. This Taira kid is very young, very good, and he's just going to get better. So
yeah, for sure. Let's see what happens. Should be an interesting fight. We'll move on to the next fight, which I got to pull it up, Weezy. I got to pull up the 1-800 Gambler because I feel like nobody should be betting on this fight. And we'll kind of break it down and talk about why. So Gina Mazzani, she is 33 years old, 5'6" with a 68-inch reach. Shanna Young, 31 years old, 5'7" with a 65-inch reach. It's going to be Young, who is 2 years younger. It's going to be Young, who's also going to have a 1-inch height advantage, but it is going to be Mazzani, who's going to have a 3-inch reach advantage. Mazzani is 1-4 in her last 5 fights. A decision loss against Lena Landsberg, a knockout loss against Maisie Chazon, a knockout loss against Julia Avila, a knockout win against Rachel Ostovich, and then a knockout loss against Priscilla Ketchup-Beating. As far as Shanna Young, she is 2-3 in her last 5 fights. She had a submission loss to Sarah Alpar on the Contender Series, and then she did make her debut in the UFC against Maisie Chazon, lost by decision, and then she lost by knockout against Stephanie Egger. So, why I won't be betting this fight, which on paper, like this looks like a very solid matchup for Gina Mazzani. And you take a look at some of the numbers, and I'm sure you'll touch on Weezy, but they're actually impressive. More specifically, her wrestling numbers. She's averaging 4.7 takedowns per 15 minutes, which that is in a 7-fight sample. So you got to love that. And then on top of that, a 58% takedown accuracy. So on paper, Gina Mazzani should come out here and she should be able to take down Shanna Young whenever she wants. Shanna Young, what does she struggle with? She struggles with the ground game. Sarah Alpar took her down twice. She took her back in the third round and submitted her. Sarah Alpar did. On top of that, Maisie Chiasson took her down 3 times in the UFC debut, and the Maisie Chiasson controlled her for over 8 minutes of the fight. And then on top of that, we just saw Stephanie Egger take her down twice and completely, beat her on the mat and finish her on the mat as well. So I think where Shanna Young struggles with the takedown defense in the ground game, that is where Gina Mazzani is going to shine in this fight. But we saw in Mazzani's last fight against Priscilla Ketchabeating where she looked very good early. She won the first round. She won the second round. I think it was Mike Beltran stood him up. And then once they stood up in that mid-late second round, Mazzani just had nothing left. She was gassed out, and Priscilla put it on her and knocked her out. So, the conditioning is definitely a worry. But, yeah, you got to think Mazzani comes in here. She takes down Young whenever she wants. I don't really think Young's UFC caliber. I'm not really sure what Young is good at, honestly, besides being tough. But outside of that, Young, her striking defense is horrendous. Her striking's not great. She's low volume. Her takedown defense isn't good. Her grappling's not good. But she's tough. She's very tough. And she's probably going to have the cardio advantage. But, yeah, I like Mazzani here, but the cardio is the one thing that scares me in this fight. But I think Mazzani should get it done, whether it is a TKO, a submission, you're riding it out for 3 rounds. But I will say that gassing out in the second round was a pretty bad look last time.
It really was. But you mentioned just a very, very important part of that fight, and that was the stand-up, right? Mm-hmm. If Beltran doesn't stand them up, Mazzani gets a chance to recover there, and that's what wrestlers do, because getting takedowns is exhausting. But when you get the takedown and then you put your opponent's back on the mat, if you're able to keep them there, you can recover, you can rest. And she wasn't given that opportunity, which was weird, because it wasn't like Priscilla was doing things to stop the takedowns up until that point. Gina was having her way, fighting her fight, and Priscilla just got flat out helped out by Mike Beltran there. So Shanna Young, this number that we see down here in the bottom middle in the grappling statistics, she's been taken down 7 out of 15 times. Her takedown defense is just north of 50%. She's being taken down 3.47 times per 15 minutes, and she's allowing 40% control time against. And then you see what Mazzani's doing, 43% control time for, 23% control time against. So she's almost out controlling her opponents at a 2-to-1 ratio. And you see that the things that Young isn't doing well, Mazzani's doing them very well. Getting her takedowns at over a 50% clip, almost a 60% clip, is fantastic. So Mazzani's got great wrestling here. I think if she's able to get these takedowns over Shanna, we won't have to worry as much about her gas tank giving out here, because it's rare that you see referees stand people up as quickly as Beltran stood them up. It was even a little bit suspicious to me, to be honest with you. And that was somebody who had a ton of cachoeira, in DraftKings that week. It wasn't like I was rooting for Mazzani or had any money on her. I was just like, that was weird. That was a weird stand-up. So look, Mazzani should have her way here, but one of the things that I'm really trying to do is stay away from betting juiced women's favorites, because sometimes they just don't show up or they have a horrible game plan. Mazzani is pretty one-dimensional. She's a wrestler first. That's how she wins minutes. That's how she wins fights. So I think that that's what she's going to do here, and Shanna doesn't really have the tools to deal with that kind of an attack. Shanna's going to need some help from the refs here, or maybe from the judges. But I don't think she's going to get it, and I think it's a bad reason to bet on somebody saying that you hope they get help from the refs or the judges. So love Mazzani's offensive wrestling, hate Shanna Young's defensive wrestling. Neither one of these ladies is effective enough in the striking to talk much about that. So I do think Mazzani wins this one comfortably.
Yeah, I think so too. But laying -174 Mazzani just doesn't Doesn't feel good to me, but I think this is such a winnable fight for her. She opened at -175. She went all the way up to -150. She is now back down to -174. Shanna Young opened up +150. She went to +130. She's back to +149. So this interests me. I'm curious to get your thoughts on it. I think, the violence props on these are interesting. We have the over/under set at 2.5, over 2.5 -175, under 2.5 is +145. The reason being is, Gina Mazzani is kind of a killer be killed fighter. Somebody said in the chat, like, when it does not go her way, she kind of quits in there. Mazzani's been finished in 4 out of 5 losses, 3 by knockout, 1 by submission, and on top of that, she does have a 71% finish rate, 57% by knockout, 14% by sub. On top of that, Shanna Young has been finished in half her losses, 1 by knockout, 1 by submission. 5 of 7 of Mazzani's fights have finished inside the distance. So I think the under at plus money would be kind of the where I look. I think Mazzani is going to have many opportunities to finish Shanna Young on the mat. And if Mazzani does not have her way, she tends to quit in there sometimes. So I kind of like the under. Any thoughts on that?
I like it, man. I mean, we're talking about 9 combined wins and 6 of them being inside the distance. Now, is Shanna Young going to finish anybody at the UFC level? Probably not. I think if we were to go and look at who Shanna Young's finishes are against, we would see that they're not against UFC level opponents. So, that worries me just a little bit. But, I think Mazzani could potentially finish Shanna Young. I like the 6 of 9 losses coming inside the distance, and the under 2.5 is plus money, right?
Yeah, plus 145.
And we do know that this is a 125-pound bout, right? Is it 125 or 135, by the way?
Should be 125. I can double check. Yeah, 125.
125. So these fights are finishing 41% of the time inside the distance. So anytime we're getting plus 150 for fight doesn't go to decision, we're doing a little bit better. Add to the fact that 6 of 9 losses were inside the distance. I think if we can get fight doesn't go better than plus 150, that might be something that would be interesting me.
Yep, for sure. I like it. I think violence, if anything, in this fight. But yeah, it's most definitely a 1-800 gambler for sure that you do not want to put a ton of money on. Move on.
Sure, dude. Hang on just a second. Capper Comparison Picks in the chat is saying, is Gina Mazzani James Krause's girlfriend? No, she's Tim Elliott's girlfriend.
Interesting.
Yeah. Tim Elliott and her have been, they've met in Vegas and they've been together ever since. So
nice. There you go. All right. Maybe Elliott will be in her corner this week.
Yeah, she could teach her how to cheat and hold gloves and grab the fence and all that stuff. And hey, man, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
Yep. Tell that to Priscilla Cachoeira.
Yeah, with wow, she's good at it.
Oh, Cachoeira. Gotta love her. But we'll move on to the next fight. We have Natan Levy going against Mike Breeden. We have Levy, who is 30 years old, 5'9", with a 71-inch reach. Breeden, 33 years old, 5'10", with a 70-inch reach. Natan Levy made his debut against Rafa Garcia. Garcia was able to get him down, I think, like 7 or 8 times. Got him down a ton. I was not able to control him a lot, but Rafa Garcia was able to get it done there. Prior to that, he did have a submission win on the Contender Series. He looked really good doing so. Mike Breeden stepped in on short notice against Alexander Hernandez and got knocked out in like the very first minute of that fight. Prior to that, he got decision win, knockout win, a decision loss, and then knockout win, 3-2. Not the best competition, but yeah, kind of a lower level fight here. What do you think about this one, Weezy?
It's an interesting one, man. I watched the tape on both of these guys. I got as much film in on both of them as I could. It's Breeden, who's twice as experienced in the number of pro fights. He's got about 35 more minutes of pro cage time and 1 more year as a pro. But it's Levy with 9 more minutes in the UFC cage. Levy has finished half of his wins by submission, half of his wins by decision, and Breeden has finished 8 of his 10 wins inside the distance by knockout, 2 of them by decision. In these guys, 5 combined losses, 2 of them have been inside the distance. Mike Breeden has been knocked out twice. When we look at the striking numbers here, and we don't have much in the way of numbers, but Levy is a karate guy, a karate black belt, and a kung fu black belt, which was very interesting. And he's got really nice wrestling and really nice grappling. Not the greatest takedown defense, though, as Garcia was taking him down quite a bit. I think we're going to see Levy be better everywhere than Breeden. The problem is that Breeden is pretty durable. He stays in your face. He pressures you. throws good low leg kicks, and he's got nice hands. And he just seems to be a good fighter. He seems to be the kind of guy who can thrive while there are bombs being thrown. While Levy is more of a minute winner, in my opinion. I mean, he's definitely dangerous on the feet with his striking. Throws a lot of spinning hook kicks and, some kung fu techniques that you don't usually see at the UFC level. So he's going to be the bigger guy. He's going to be the longer guy. He's going to be the more explosive striker. But I think that Breeden is going to be walking him down and closing that distance pretty regularly. That's kind of how he fights. So I don't know if Levy is going to be entirely comfortable on the feet here. Levy will be going for takedowns. He always does. But Mike Breeden's got excellent takedown defense. You don't just see it at the UFC level. You see it on the regional scene as well. People shoot in on him. He gets his ass back, and he gets that underhook, and he peels you off of him. So it's going to be an interesting fight. I think, like I said, I think Levy's the better grappler. I think he's the more powerful striker. I think he's more well-rounded just in general, but Breeden can be a tough out, man. When guys just walk you down, they can walk through your best punches and are just gamers. I think he could give Levy some problems, man. I mean, if we go and we watch the Ben Lugo fight for Natan Levy, dude, he should have lost that fight, man. I don't know how that fight wasn't stopped because Lugo absolutely had him out and completely out on his feet. But the referee let it go. And to Levy's credit, after taking an ass shaving in the first 2.5 minutes of the second round, he wound up getting a clinch, resting for about 15 seconds, getting away from the guy, and then he shot a single leg and got back in and completed the single leg and was able to ride out about a minute on top before he wound up getting reversed and put in trouble again. But this guy Levy, he's got heart. He's got durability. The guy can actually fight. I mean, he's not just some guy that is looking for a submission and will quit if he doesn't get it. So it's interesting. Both of these guys are pretty durable. I think Levy's the more well-rounded and more dangerous fighter for sure. But Breeden is a tough out. So it's an odd matchup. But I see that Levy's a pretty big-sized favorite, and I kind of get it.
Yeah, Levy opened up as a minus 240 favorite, actually. Money's been coming in on Breeden. Levy is now minus 190. And then Breeden opened up plus 205. He's currently plus 165. And yeah, I agree. I think that Levy is really good everywhere, actually. I think his striking is very solid, but he can mix in the takedowns as well. His wrestling is good. His grappling is very good. He's slick on the mat, slick off his back as well. I like what I see from the guy. He's able to take down Rafa Garcia 3 times. Obviously, Rafa Garcia was able to take him down 7 times, and he lost that fight, but Rafa Garcia is a pretty good fighter. Then on the Contender Series, I was really impressed with his game plan. Went out there and controlled Santana for 8 minutes in that fight, and then eventually submitted him there. But yeah, on the feet, Breeden's going to come forward. I like his toughness, but you got to feel like Levy's going to have success in the strike in there. If it does not like how it's going on the feet, take him down to the mat potentially. But yeah, this is kind of a close fight, a fight that I don't have the best read on. I got to look into it a little bit more. But yeah, it looks like Levy's minus 190. That's the best line out there. I see him like minus 230, minus 210 on some books. The fight goes to decision, minus 145. The fight doesn't go. It's plus 125. Levy has 0 knockouts on his record. He does have half of his wins coming by submission. And then Mike Breeden has 0 submissions on his record. And then he has 80% of his wins coming by knockout. And I don't really see Breeden knocking out, Levy. I kind of see this going the distance. Minus 145 fight goes decision. I don't hate it, but I don't know. What do you think about that?
The fight, I kind of feel like this fight is going to go to decision, but I don't have a good read on it either way. Like I say, I think Levy really is better than this guy everywhere. It's just that, we haven't seen him knock anyone out yet, but he's got great striking. We've seen him get out wrestled by a guy in Rafa Garcia, but he does kind of tend to rely on his ground game. So, Levy's one of these guys where everything that he does kind of jumps off the page and it's visually pleasing and it kind of gets you excited. And Breeden's the opposite of that. You look at his body and you're like, he doesn't look like, an MMA fighter, but dude, he fights like one, I mean, he's got a chin. He walks forward. He's aggressive. He throws more volume than his opponents. And he is very good at stopping takedowns. So if, he's the kind of guy where if you don't get your way right away, he can look a lot better than you think he's going to look. It's just one guy is not that impressive to look at. The other one is very impressive to look at. But when you look at who these guys have beaten, you know, it's actually similar levels here.
Yeah, fight. I'm probably not going to bet, but yeah, looks like money is coming in on the Breeden side. We'll have to see where that line goes. But we'll move on to the next fight. And yeah, this is probably one of the more exciting fights on the card. We have Gabe Green going against Johan Lainesse. We have Gabe Green, who is 28 years old, 5'10", with a 73-inch reach. Johan, he is 29 years old, 6'1", with a 76-inch reach. We'll take a look at the last few fights. We have Gabe Green, who is 4-1 in his last 5 fights, made his debut on short notice against Dan Rodriguez, lost that fight by decision, and then won a decision against Philip Rowe in his last fight. As far as Johan, he did get a knockout on the Contender Series, and prior to that, 5-0 in his last 5 fights, 4 of those coming by knockout. So yeah, this fight's going to be very, very fun, just the way both these guys fight, more specifically Gabe Green, who's going to want to go in there and just brawl. This guy, Gabe Green, he has a lot of, good qualities about him. First of all, he's young. He's 28 years old. I was kind of shocked when I saw his age. He looks much, much, much older than 28. But yeah, he's only 20 years old. You like to see that. On top of that, this guy's going to throw a ton of volume. I think his striking's very good as well. I even think his grappling's good. I think he's a purple belt in BJJ. He's able to get fights down to the mat as well, and his cardio is good. So on top of that, his toughness is good. His durability is good. He's been knocked out twice. Once was against Jalen Turner a couple years back, and once was against another guy. I forget his name, but he has been knocked out twice. But against D-Rod, the dude ate like 180 shots to the face and was still coming forward. Same thing with Philip Rowe. Philip Rowe touched him up a couple times, and he was still able to get those shots as well. The one knock on Gabe Green, and which makes this fight kind of interesting, the one knock on him is this guy has, horrendous striking defense. This guy relies on his chin, and, it's worked out against D-Rod. He was able to eat those shots against Philip Rowe. He was able to eat the shots, but I don't know if he's going to want to eat those shots against Johan, who hits like an absolute truck. Johan, this guy's okay. He has some wrestling. A lot of his fights he does go to his wrestling, but he's down to just stand in there and bang. And I think these guys are going to stand and bang. If this fight does hit the mat, you got to favor Gabe Green in terms of the grappling. But what scares me in this fight is I feel like Gabe Green's going to be winning the minutes here, whether it's on the feet, whether it's on the mat. But, Gabe Green is very, very, very hittable. And again, Johan hits like an absolute truck. I think Johan, if he wins this fight, it's going to be by knockout. It's probably going to be by first round knockout. As the fight goes on, Johan does slow down. It's not like he's completely gassed, but you can see that his mouth is wide open in the second round. He can still kind of fight through it. It doesn't look like his power really translate late. A lot of his knockouts are early on. Yeah. So I think it's going to be an early knockout if Johan does win this fight, and Gabe Green has been knocked out in the first round. But if Gabe Green can get out of that first round, I think he's going to have a much better cardio. I think he's going to have more paths to victory. I think he's going to be the minute winner. But Johan is going to be very live early on because he has a ton of power, and Gabe Green eats punches with his face, which is not the best combination. But I like Gabe Green here. Weezy, I sent the interview of Gabe Green into our Twitter chat, and apparently Gabe Green said that he had a heart attack. He said that somebody punched him or something in the chest, and then his heart stopped, and he had to get like surgery on it. And that was just like within the last year. He's been pulling out of fights, so he's been dealing with that. So that was very sketchy to hear. How is he going to recover from that? A heart attack. It does not sound good. I'm not a doctor, but that sounds very bad. So that was one sketchy thing I heard in the interview, but I think it's a very winnable fight for Gabe Green, and I think I see why money's coming in on him. But with the lack of striking defense, with the heart attack news, another fight I'm probably just going to sit back and watch, or maybe look at some violence here, Weezy.
Yeah. Oh, man, it's an interesting fight. I think a violence bet is not a bad spot here because we have seen Green finish in 2 of his 3 losses. We've never seen Lainesse lose. He's undefeated yet, but the problem is that the guy doesn't have great conditioning, and that is not a good thing to be against Gabe Green, man. This guy is never going to stop coming forward. He throws a ton of volume. He stays in your face, and he puts on a pace even late in fights. You could even see in the Daniel Rodriguez fight, he took that fight on like less than a week's notice, and that fight went the full 3 rounds, and he, Rodriguez was landing on him, and he would not go away. So it's really interesting. Look, Lainesse is a power guy, and he throws 100% power into all of his strikes. So he does not know how to pace himself. He doesn't know how to win minutes. And that could potentially be a big problem at this level when you're not fighting regional scene guys who will go away the second you land your first big shot. Gabe Green has 1 win by decision. Lainesse actually does have 2. But you do see that when the fight goes past the first round, this guy's mouth is wide open. He's gasping for air. And like I said, it's a pacing issue probably more than a conditioning issue, because you can't throw 100% force into all of your strikes and expect to be maintaining that power into the second or the third round. Green is a very crafty grappler. When he gets put in bad spots, he almost always entirely either gets back up or winds up on top. He's constantly threatening for submissions, and he's very dangerous on the ground. Lainesse has never subbed anybody. So I worry about if this fight goes to the ground, I think Gabe Green is going to be much better than him down there. But Lainesse is going to be very dangerous early in the fight. I think it's Lainesse early, or it's going to be Gabe Green late. Yeah, so we're talking 18 combined wins, and 15 of them, Brady, have been inside the distance here. So that's over an 80% win rate for these guys, and a 67% loss rate inside the distance. So I think that violence will probably be the best way to look at this fight. And the other terrifying numbers, Brady, are Gabe Green throwing 14.17 significant strike attempts per minute. This is a pace that Johan Lainesse will not be able to keep up for 15 minutes. So if he does not get Gabe Green out of there early, and I think it's going to be tough for him to do that because Green's got a chin and he's durable and he constantly comes forward. So I think Johan needs room in order to make those power strikes work. So yeah, man, I see Gabe Green being the better fighter here, being the more experienced fighter, the more well-rounded fighter, and definitely the better conditioned fighter here. So I see why the line is moving on Green, and I agree with it.
Yeah, I agree with it too. I think he's the better fighter, pretty much everywhere. The cardio, the output, the striking. Like, Johan's not a great striker technically. He kind of throws technique out of the window, but
he has no technique.
No,
he has no technique, but he's trying to kill you. So that's sometimes enough.
Yeah, he slings bombs, and it works out. It works out against these lower level guys. Is it going to work out in the UFC? Probably not. Against Gabe Green, who does not block punches, maybe it can work, but I just think his path to victory is just limited in that first round. If you like Johan, you got to imagine it's going to be a first round knockout. If not, I think Gabe Green kind of drowns this guy, heart attack or not, right?
Yeah, the heart attack is terrifying, but that this being a UFC fight, they're not going to let Gabe Green fight unless the doctors have had a serious look at him. And it's not they're going to be just like, oh, you think you can make it, Gabe? No, they're going to tell him if there's something wrong with his heart, they're not letting him fight. So we just got to kind of assume that he's past this, but it's a very important thing when you keep something like that in your mind. It should, even if you're very confident on Gabe Green, should keep you from going all in on him, just knowing that the dude had an actual heart attack this year.
Yeah, I was like shocked when I heard that. But we have the fight goes decision plus 140. The fight doesn't go minus 160. Yeah, I do like that. So Gabe Green has one decision win, and in that decision win against Phil Rowe, I really thought he had multiple opportunities to finish that fight. He dropped Phil Rowe a couple times with those leg kicks. So yeah, I think he could put it on Johan late. I think he can get him out of there. And Johan, if he wins, I think it's early on. So I think the fight doesn't go decision. It makes sense. Minus 160, you're not paying like a minus 300, minus 400. I think it's fairly reasonable.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with the power that Lainesse brings and the lack of conditioning. And Gabe Green is a 90% finisher. And the only one he didn't finish was the Rowe fight. And if he would have just let Rowe stand back up, Rowe was done. His legs were completely done. So, and he got himself out of bad spots in that fight too. Phil Rowe is a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu who trains every day with Rodolfo Vieira. So, when you look at the past opponents of Gabe Green, this guy's fought Jalen Turner. He's fought Daniel Rodriguez. He's fought Philip Rowe. He's got a win over Javier El Mariachi Garcia. That's a very good regional scene win. So he's seen Johan Lainesse types with better grappling than what Lainesse has. So, I think that this is not going to be anything different than what Gabe has seen thus far.
Yep, and I didn't even talk about the line. Gabe Green open up. My goodness, dude. Gabe Green open up plus 160, and he's currently minus 135. Johan open up minus 185. He's currently plus 115. So, yeah, plus 160 was interesting. He moved instantly to plus 100, and then it's been nothing but money coming in on Gabe Green, and you got to expect that to continue.
Yeah, yeah, but people are gonna watch the film on Lainesse, and he's got some impressive knockouts. So sometimes these contender series guys, they get juice because they're undefeated. You can't find a fight where you've seen them lose, and then you've seen them excel against lower level competition. It's easier to think that they can make that next step. And who knows, maybe he will. This dude's dangerous.
Yeah, he hits like a truck. But yeah, this fight's gonna be fun. It's probably my favorite, one of my favorite fights on the prelims for sure. Let us keep moving on before we do so. 162 of you in here. If you all can please smash the like button. Let's get those likes up. Also subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio. Me and Weezy do go live every week, 7:15 p.m. Eastern time, breaking down the card nice and early for you guys. We'll take it to the next fight here, which is going to be interesting. We have Francisco Figueiredo going against Daniel Da Silva. We have Francisco Figueiredo, who is 32 years old, 5'6" with a 69-inch reach. Da Silva, 25 years old, 5'6" with a 70-inch reach. Da Silva is going to be 7 years younger, and he's going to have a 1-inch reach advantage as well. We take a look at Da Silva's last couple fights. He has 3-2 in his last 5 fights. He made his debut against Jeff Molina, lost that fight by knockout. And he looked really good early on in terms of the striking. He was able to get Jeff Molina down. Molina was able to reverse him. And, we saw that Da Silva was very slick off his back. He threw up multiple submissions. But as we know, Molina is very, very good. And once that fight hit the second round, we saw a look on Da Silva's face like he's not been there before. And he really hasn't much. This guy is, finishing guys in round 1. This guy's never seen a third round. I think he has maybe one finish in the second round. But Daniel Da Silva is a kill or be killed fighter. Very exciting. I like what I see from the guy, but I need to see a little bit more. Francisco Figueiredo, I don't think this guy's that great. I mean, making his debut against Jerome Rivera is not UFC caliber. He actually dropped the third round to Jerome Rivera, which was a terrible look. And then on top of that, he lost to Malcolm Gordon as like a minus 300 favorite. Gordon came in there with a very good game plan, closing the distance instantly, not giving Figueiredo opportunities to, knock him out, touch that chin. But just losing to Malcolm Gordon, losing the third round against Jerome Rivera, just not a great look to me. So we have Daniel Da Silva, who the guy is, I don't know, is he round 1 or bust potentially? Because when we saw him against Molina in that second round, he just looked horrible and got knocked out instantly. And then we have Figueiredo, who this is a guy that is nothing like his brother. He has no power. He does not have the Figueiredo power. He has no gas tank. He slows down, and he just doesn't do anything. This guy attempts 3 significant strikes per minute. Like, it doesn't get much worse than that. This guy's throwing nothing on the feet. He's not throwing with power. He doesn't have cardio. I will say, though, his wrestling is very solid. His takedown defense is very solid, and his grappling is very solid. He's a black belt in BJJ. But, the lack of activity, the lack of cardio really does concern me here for bad Figgy. Daniel Da Silva, his striking looks really good. He looks explosive. He's going to go after you. He's going to do more than Figueiredo is going to do. It's just the cardio of him even scares me a little bit as well. So, yeah, kind of a sketchy fight here. I like what I see from Da Silva, but I need to see more. I would like to see him have success later in fights. We've never seen him in the third round, whereas at least with Figueiredo, we have seen him in the third round, although it's been bad. We have seen him there. So, yeah, it's a closely lined fight, I think, for a very good reason, but it should be a fun one, Weezy.
It should, man. I don't see how it isn't, actually. This guy Lacerda is super fun to watch. Killer be killed fighter, never seen a third round in his career. So, I mean, this guy, we know that he's coming out there to kill his opponent. He reminds me a lot of Cameron Else, but much better than Cameron Else, because Cameron Else kind of like comes out just throwing bombs, and he looks for a darts choke. And that's basically, if he doesn't get that, he's done. But Lacerda is good from the top position. He's good from bottom position. He throws bombs on the feet. And like, you'll see some of the footage on this guy. He's coming out throwing head kicks 2 seconds into a fight and landing them, and getting people out of there quickly. So when we saw Figueiredo lose in the UFC, it was to Malcolm Gordon. Malcolm Gordon just put a pace on him. And Malcolm Gordon wound up getting that takedown in the third round and basically riding the rest of the round out on top position. He got reversed once, but then reversed it right back. So Figueiredo doesn't deal with, a fast pace well. I mean, look at 3.27 significant strike attempts per minute is not a lot, and his opponents are throwing 7.27. So they're throwing 4 more significant strike attempts per minute than he is. But Figueiredo has gotten 6 of the 8 takedowns that he's went for, so he's done really well there. But even though he's gotten 6 takedowns and his opponents have only gotten 2, he's not even out controlling his opponents at a 2-to-1 ratio. It's more like a 1.5-to-1 ratio. So Francisco's been okay on the ground, but look, when this thing is standing, Lacerda is going to be throwing absolute bombs. When this thing is on the ground, if Lacerda's on top, he's going to be trying to finish. And if he's on the bottom, he's going to be getting wrist control and looking for arm bars and triangles, and he can finish those. I don't think Figueiredo is going to like the pace that Lacerda puts on him here. I think Lacerda is just the more determined fighter. He's the guy that's going out there looking to end your night fast. He fights like he's double parked. And I just don't see, I see Figueiredo being a minute winner that wins minutes against subpar competition. You go back and you look at this dude's record, Brady. Who has he beaten? He's got draws and losses to people that I've never heard of. And then we add to the fact here that Lacerda is 7 years younger. He's got an inch reach advantage. He fights out of both stances. He's only got 5 less fights than Figueiredo, despite the fact that Figueiredo's been doing this for 7.5 years longer than Lacerda. So Lacerda in 5 years has 13 fights, 2.5 fights per year. Figueiredo in almost 13 years has 18 fights. So, less than 1.5 fights per year for Figueiredo. So Lacerda's been more active. He's younger. He's not at a big experience disadvantage here. He's got much more finishing power, much more power on the feet, and on the ground, he's just the more aggressive guy trying to win fights here. I hate this for Figueiredo. I think that this is going to be De Silva all day, and I would bet him to win inside the distance because this guy has never won a decision in his career. And if there's one guy here that's probably going to be the better minute winner, it could be Figueiredo. So I like Daniel Lacerda inside the distance.
Yeah, I think he can finish him as well. And I think I like it. We see that De Silva opened up plus 110. He's currently minus 125, and Figueiredo opened up minus 130. He's currently plus 105. What interests me more in terms of the money line, especially, is going to be that fight doesn't go. The fight goes is minus 160, and the fight doesn't go is plus 140. Just doesn't really seem right to me. Kind of like last week, they had the Jordan Wright props out last week for the violence, and it was like minus 200 all week. I was like, have they ever watched a Jordan Wright fight? And it's kind of the same thing here. Like, have they ever watched a Daniel De Silva fight? This guy's never seen a third round, and once you see him fight, you can certainly see why. This guy throws caution to the wind. He's dangerous on the feet. He's dangerous on the mat as well. He's been finished in both of his losses. He's finished all his losses. So I think the fight doesn't go up plus 140 is kind of ridiculous, but that is on 5 dimes. And of course, Weezy, we do not have access to that.
No, we do not. And we don't have access to even fatter pockets than what we do have because of that. But the fight doesn't go is a great look here. De Silva inside the distance is a great look. And if you haven't watched Francisco Figueiredo strike yet, those hands are at his waist constantly. Yeah. They're never up here. They're always down here. And even when he's jabbing, he's bringing his fist back to his waist. I think De Silva is going to punt his head into the upper deck. I think that's what's going to happen. I think it's going to happen quickly.
Yeah, I think Figgy's been a boring fighter thus far, but I think Lacerda is going to come out here and make this a very exciting fight. His style is very exciting.
Very exciting. And yeah, he's going to be super fun to watch. And I think that this is going to be Figueiredo's last fight in the UFC. Francisco Figueiredo's last fight, I should say.
Yeah, he's nothing like his brother. And I think he's younger. I think he's younger than his brother too. He's 32. I think Big Figgy's like 34. I
think you're right about that. Yeah, because Figueiredo's definitely getting, to that point where as a flyweight, you start to say, shit, man, he's 35, 36. It's not like a 36-year-old heavyweight, dude. That's young.
I think it'd be hilarious if they put Francisco and Dawson against each other. I think that'd be a fun fight.
Yeah.
It'd be hilarious.
I think it would be one-sided.
Yeah. Dawson in 30 seconds. But, yep, should be a fun fight here. Probably one of the better fights on the prelims as well. And we will keep moving on. I think we're getting close to the main card. If it's not this one, it's the next one. We have Andrei Fili going against Joanderson Brito. We have Fili, who is 31 years old, 5'11" with a 74-inch reach. Brito, he is 27 years old, 5'8" with a 72-inch reach. Brito going to be younger by 4 years. Brito going to be at a 3-inch height disadvantage and a 2-inch reach disadvantage as well. Fili, he is 2-2-1 no contest in his last 5 fights. A knockout win against Shaman Marias, a decision loss against Sadiq Youssef, a decision win against Charles Jourdain, a decision loss to Bryce Mitchell, and that no contest against Daniel Pineda, where I had a violence bet, and he was on his way to finishing Pineda. He got poked in the eye, and it turned into a no contest there. But yeah, he looked good in that Pineda fight, probably the best we've seen Andrei Fili. So looking to bounce it back here for sure against Brito, who got a win on the Contender Series against Diego Lopez, made his debut against Bill Algeo, and Algeo was able to win that by decision here. So yeah, interesting fight. Brito's taking like a massive step up in competition here against Andrei Fili, who has fought some very good guys. You know, Andrei Fili's fought guys like Bryce Mitchell, Charles Jourdain, Sadiq Youssef, guys like that. So definitely a big step in competition here against a very well-rounded guy in Andrei Fili, who's good everywhere. You know, good takedowns, good grappling, good striking. You know, this guy is very durable as well, has good cardio. Just like the complete package there. So Weezy should be a fun one. Step up for Brito. What do you think about this one here?
Yeah, definitely a step up for Brito. And I'm just looking at his tapology here. I want to see. He wasn't supposed to fight Algeo, I don't think. I think that they had another fight planned for him. I think it was supposed to be against somebody really good. Oh, Ashkabov. That was before. Okay, so it was Algeo. My bad. Look, it is a step up. Fili's got 14 more professional fights. 220 more minutes in the pro cage, 15 more UFC level fights, and about 170 more minutes in the UFC cage. So Fili's damn good, and this is a huge step up. Over a huge sample size, Fili throws over 2 more significant strike attempts per minute than his opponents do. He lands at just about the same rate as they do, 37% striking accuracy. He's got 4 knockdowns in 17 fights, averaging 0.31 knockdowns per 15 minutes. And he's only been knocked down, it looks like, 3 times in 17 fights. So he's getting knocked down a little bit less than he's knocking his opponents down. Brito landing a little more significant strikes per minute than he absorbs, throwing a little bit more than his opponents do. He's done well getting takedowns and controlling his opponents. Only 30% of his 2 UFC fights thus far have taken place at striking range. And that might be a place that he can win minutes against Fili. But, you know, Fili's been training forever at Team Alpha Male. We've seen this guy come out there and be able to win wrestling exchanges against guys that you might not think that he could win them against. And still, like, you know, manage to go 3 rounds, you know, with Bryce Mitchell and have his moments in that fight against as dominant of a grappler as Bryce. So, and then when you look at the strength of schedule, I mean, come on, man. 1.42 ratio for Fili, and it's 0.33 for Brito. 9.82 total fights, and a 5.76 and 4.06 average record that Fili's facing, while for Brito, it's 0.5 wins and 1.5 losses. This guy's beating winning competition with 8 UFC fights on the average, does Fili, and he's losing to guys that have over 12 UFC fights and a 1.75, you know, win-to-loss ratio. So huge step up in competition against a guy in Fili who's really good everywhere. And his performance against Daniel Pineda was actually terrifying. That was so one-sided and such a dominant performance. It's a shame that the foul happened, because that was as good as we've seen Andrei Fili look in a long time. And now it's been a minute. That was last year, you know. So I think it's been about a year since we've seen Fili in the cage, right?
I think it was like, I forget the date. Maybe I could double check, but
yeah,
it was
I'm
a
looking
while.
right now actually at Fili's fight history, and the last one against Pineda was, it was June of last year. So it's, you know, 10 months off. That's too long. I don't know why, if there were any you know, if there were any issues here for Fili or any injuries, because he looked so good against Pineda. It's a shame that fight got stopped, but either way, this is a tough road to hoe for Joanderson Brito here, and I see why this line is a little bit juiced.
Yeah, like how does Brito win this fight? Is he going to knock out Fili? I don't think so. Is he going to take down Fili? I think early on he could. I think Brito is very, very strong. Good wrestling, but I just don't think he can keep up for 3 rounds there. So yeah, I do like Fili myself. I think on the feed it's Fili all day. I think even Fili can go for takedowns as well. We saw Algio was able to take down and control Brito for some parts of those fights. So I do like a Fili, but he is a pretty big favorite. Fili is the second biggest favorite in the card. He opened at minus 255. He is currently minus 250. He went all the way down to minus 300 at one point, just recently back up. Joanderson Brito opened up plus 215, went all the way to plus 250, is back down to plus 210. The over 2.5 is minus 155, and the under 2.5 is plus 125. Yeah, nothing really sticking out for me. I will pick Fili to win, but minus 250, maybe a good parlay piece, but I will not be having any parlays this week more than likely.
I don't like any parlay pieces this week. I mean, unless something, comes out and fight doesn't go where it just looks way off on one of the fights. But really, there's not a lot jumping off the page thus far. But, it's kind of hard to picture Joanderson Brito finding a way to win this fight against somebody as experienced and well-rounded and powerful as Andrei Fili.
Yeah, for sure. We'll move on to the next fight. We have Jared Gordon going against Grant Dawson. We have Jared Gordon, 33 years old, 5'9" with a 68-inch reach. Grant Dawson, 20 years old, 5'10" with a 72-inch reach. Dawson, 5 years younger. Dawson with a 1-inch height advantage, and Dawson with a 4-inch reach advantage as well. Jared Gordon, he has 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Had a decision win against Dan Moret, a knockout loss against Charles Oliveira, a decision win against Chris Fishgold, a decision win against Danny Chavez, and a decision win against Joe Selecki. As far as Grant Dawson, he is 4-0 and 1 draw in his last 5 fights. Submission win over Mike Trezano, submission win over Derek Minner, decision win against Nad Narimani, a knockout win against Leonardo Santos, and then a draw against Ricky Glenn, where Dawson was able to go out there in those first 2 rounds, kind of cruise, and then the 3rd round hit. And I don't know, Dawson kind of fell off a cliff, which was weird because in the Santos fight, Dawson went out there with a very wrestling-heavy pace, and he was unsuccessful in a lot of those takedowns. Santos has amazing takedown defense, and Dawson looked fresh in the 3rd round. He was able even to finish Santos late. So, I thought, Dawson had great cardio, but maybe it was a one-off, but he looked very, very bad in that Glenn fight. But he did move camps. He moved to American Top Team. I watched Grant Dawson's interview today. So that should be a good move. He said he's getting, a bunch of different looks, and that's good. And he was talking about how he needed a change after that Glenn fight. And he's talking about how he wants to kind of prove a point that Glenn 3rd round was not himself. And I think he does. I think we're going to see some improvements from Grant. We got to expect improvements. He's 20 years old. He's moving to a really good camp in American Top Team there. So I like that out of him. Jared Gordon, this guy's 33 years old. He's getting up there in age, but he's a veteran. He's good. He's good everywhere. Good striking, brown belt in BJJ, good grappling. But you look at his last fight, Joe Selecki, who I think is really good. But Joe Selecki was able to take down Jared Gordon 4 times. And I think Dawson is a much better wrestler than Joe Selecki. I don't think he's a much better grappler, but a much better wrestler, especially. Dawson wrestled in high school. And when Dawson gets you down, you're not getting up. Dawson has some of the best control. And on paper, Jared Gordon has a 50% takedown defense. So just seeing how easily, Gordon's getting taken down, seeing Joe Selecki taking him down. And what I like about Dawson is he's more position over submission. He's not going to go for, submissions, give up position there. He's going to stay on top. He's going to keep you there, and he's going to wear on you. And I like that here. Everything really checks out for me on Dawson. I like him a lot in the spot. He's younger. He's bigger. Just moved camps. I like that. The wrestling is going to be there. I think he's going to get Gordon down whenever he wants. The one thing I did not like was that Glenn performance in that 3rd round, but outside of that, I think it's a really good spot for Dawson. So one other thing I wanted to mention was I did listen to both their interviews, and Dawson was talking about how Jared Gordon reminds him a lot of his last opponent in Ricky Glenn. And it was kind of weird because Jared Gordon said the same thing. He said Grant Dawson reminds him of his last opponent in Joe Selecki, but he said that, Dawson is the much better wrestler, whereas he said Joe Selecki has the better pure BJJ. So both these fighters kind of looking at it the same. And I like Dawson here. Weezy, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I like Dawson too. But, Gordon, 3 more pro fights, 120 more minutes in the pro cage, and about 4 more years as a pro than Grant Dawson. But, Dawson's younger and bigger. When we look at the finish rates, Grant Dawson's finishing 89% of his pro wins inside the distance, while for Jared Gordon, it's 44%. And Jared Gordon has only finished one of his 6 UFC wins, while Grant Dawson's finished 4 of his 6 UFC wins. Dawson's been finished in his only loss, and Jared Gordon has been finished in all 4 of his pro losses. So 5 combined losses between these two guys, and 100% of them have been inside the distance. So that is very interesting. Wow, Gordon, really? I mean, that's very surprising to me. So that's got me looking at an under here. Jared Gordon's striking metrics in the UFC have been excellent. Throwing 1.5 more significant strike attempts than his opponents per minute, landing 2.1 more significant strikes per minute than his opponents do, landing at a 56.65% accuracy and showing sub 60% striking defense, which is pretty good. Dawson throws about 2 more significant strike attempts than his minutes, 2 more significant strike attempts per minute than his opponents do, and he lands 1 more significant strike per minute than his opponents do. 50% striking accuracy, 49% striking defense isn't great. When we look at the grappling numbers, both of these guys get a good amount of takedowns. Jared's a little more accurate with his takedowns, and he outcontrols his opponents at about a 4-to-1 ratio, while Grant Dawson's, he's getting them about a 6-to-1 ratio and getting his takedowns about a third of the time. Both of these guys showing takedown defense at 50% or below. Dawson has successfully stopped 2 of 5 takedown attempts against, and Gordon has successfully stopped half of the takedown attempts against him. Strength to schedule, all Dawson here, a 2 ratio compared to a 1.52, although Gordon has fought the more experienced competition. The wins better for Dawson here, much better in terms of ratio. And the guys that Gordon is losing to are quality opponents. 15 total fights in a 1.81 win-to-loss ratio. But Grant Dawson has got a 6-win and 0-loss record, so he's the kind of guy that you would expect to beat Jared Gordon here, while Jared Gordon is beating guys that have 1.5 wins, 1.5 losses, 3 total fights, a 1 win-to-loss ratio. So Grant Dawson, better strength to schedule. He's younger. He's bigger. The experience numbers are comparable, but Dawson, the far better finisher here. And, the striking is going to be close, but neither one of these guys really wins with their striking. They win with their grappling and top control. So we're going to find out who the better wrestler is here. One thing that I love about Grant Dawson is the pressure and the cage wrestling. His cage wrestling is next level, dude. He doesn't need to take you down in the middle of the cage. He can put your back up against the cage, dirty box you there, work towards your back, and easily win minutes up against the cage. You don't see Gordon doing that. You see Gordon winning minutes on the ground more than on the cage. So I think Grant Dawson's going to use his cage wrestling here. He's going to use the fact that he's younger and bigger in order to dominate the wrestling exchanges here. And I think he cruises and could potentially even get a late finish here by submission or a ground and pound knockout, because like I say, 5 combined losses for these guys, and 100% of them are inside the distance.
Yeah, I like it. And I did place a bet on Dawson. We were talking about it right before we went on the show, and thank goodness I did, because we now see that Dawson is at minus 160. He opened up minus 180, and we have Jared Gordon open up plus 155, and he's currently plus 140 there. The over-under set at 2.5 rounds. The over is juiced to the max, minus 220 on the over, and then plus 180 on the under. I personally think it goes to decision, but yeah, plus 180 for guys that have been finished in 100% of their losses. That seems a bit off, huh?
It does, man. And, we know that from doing the show Probability that this is going to be a lightweight fight, and lightweight fights are finishing inside the distance about 50% of the time. And here you've got a guy in Grant Dawson who's got an 89% finish rate in 17 pro wins. So that's 15 of 17 wins coming inside the distance. He's the favorite here, and Gordon has been finishing all 4 of his pro losses. So to be getting what for the under 2.5 here, or is it the fight doesn't go that you were saying?
Under 2.5 is plus 180.
plus 180, man. I mean, that's they're telling you there that's like a 35% implied probability. But the fact is that over 50% or around 50% of these fights go under 2.5. So it seems like there's a little bit of an advantage there for the fight doesn't go at plus money. That's going to be something I'm going to be taking a look at.
Yeah, and even like Dawson inside the distance, because I'd be shocked if Gordon finished Dawson. Dawson has a chin on him, and then he's not submitting Dawson, right? So I think if there is a finish, it more so comes from the Dawson side. So maybe since we are getting it under at that price, maybe Dawson inside the distance is something crazy like plus 300.
Yeah, you never know. And you got to kind of look at those things at the stats where they tell you, yeah, you're getting some value here. It doesn't mean that the bet's automatically going to hit. I mean, this is MMA. Anything can happen. But, over a long timeline, Brady, when we're saving money by paying less to win the same amount of money by taking fighters by their best win condition, that's how we can make money over the long term by finding those value spots. And Grant Dawson inside the distance and fight doesn't go to decision right here. It seems like they're mispriced.
Yep, sounds good to me. So we'll take a look at what they open up the fight doesn't go at and those other props. But we'll move on to the next fight here, and we have this fight really frustrates me, Weezy. We have Krzysztof Jotko going against Gerald Meerschaert, and the reason it frustrates me is because I'm a huge Gerald Meerschaert fan, and then I'm a huge Krzysztof Jotko hater. I'm just not a big fan of the guy. I mean, he's good. He's really good, but he's kind of boring to watch. Like, he does all the right things. He has great takedown defense. He has good striking, but he has no killer instinct. He has no volume, but he wins fights. And then you have Gerald Meerschaert, who's kind of like a very fun, dangerous grappler. If he gets it down to the mat, he's going to submit you. All his fights are very exciting. So kind of a weird clash of styles where we have a guy in Jotko who I don't think has ever been in an exciting fight. And then we have a guy in Gerald Meerschaert who has never been in a boring fight. So, something's got to give here. But we have Jotko, 32 years old, 6'1", with a 77-inch reach. Meerschaert, 34 years old, 6'1", with a 77-inch reach. Jotko, 4-1 in his last 5 fights. A decision win against Alan Amedovski. A decision win against Marc-Andre Barriault. A decision win against Eric Anders. A decision loss to Sean Strickland. And then a decision win against Misha Serkinov. As you can see, all decisions. On the flip side, you have Meerschaert. He has a knockout loss to Ian Heinisch, a knockout loss to Khamzat Chimaev, a submission win over Bartosz Fabinski, a submission win over Makhmud Muradov, and a submission win over Dustin Stoltzfus. Again, something's got to give. Jotko, decisionator, Meerschaert, crazy finisher with like a 94% finish rate. So very weird fight here, Weezy. We have Jotko, who has phenomenal takedown defense, 83%. He showed it off in his last fight against Serkinov. Serkinov shot a ton of takedowns. He was able to stuff the majority of those. When Serkinov did get the fight down to the mat, Jotko popped right back up. So I kind of think this fight is going to play out on the feet for the most part. I don't know if Meerschaert's going to be able to get it down to the mat. And if he doesn't, what is this fight going to look like? Obviously Jotko is the better striker, but Jotko's very, very low volume. He doesn't have much power at all. I think he has maybe one knockdown in the UFC, where you have Meerschaert, who is not the best striker in the world, but he's going to throw. He's going to throw hard. He had success against Muradov. Once Muradov started slowing down, he actually hurt Muradov a couple times on the feet. And, Meerschaert is improving on the feet, but just stylistically, just a weird fight here that I really don't want anything to do with, but I'm kind of intrigued to watch this one, Weezy. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, it's an intriguing fight for sure. Like you mentioned, a clash of styles. I mean, Krzysztof Jotko didn't even finish his breakfast this morning, dude. He's got one knockout win in 10 wins in the UFC. So 10% finish rate at the UFC level and a 30% finish rate as a pro. I mean, that's only 7 out of 23 career wins inside the distance. And then on the other side, you got a guy in Meerschaert who in 34 professional wins has a finish rate of 94%. I mean, that's unbelievable. I think that's 32 wins inside the distance. It's incredible. And this guy has got, I think, 26 career wins by submission. So Gerald Meerschaert can submit any middleweight on the planet pretty much, unless Damian Maia moves back up to middleweight. So it's an interesting fight because even though Jotko is not a finisher, Jotko's been finished in 3 of his 5 UFC losses. Meerschaert's been finished in 4 of his 6 UFC losses. So that's 7 out of 11 losses coming inside the distance. But in the combined wins, It's 9 out of 9 wins for Meerschaert that are inside the distance in the UFC, but 1 out of 10 for Jotko. So it kind of tells me that the time props in this particular fight, you should probably stay away from. If you think that this fight is, going to go the distance, bet Jotko by decision. If you think it's going to finish inside the distance, bet Meerschaert inside the distance, because Meerschaert's a stone cold finisher, and if he gets his way, he's going to finish this fight. And if Jotko gets his way, it's going to be one of the most boring fights in UFC history, and Jotko will win by unanimous decision by winning a ton of minutes against the cage while simultaneously doing nothing. So, we can look at Jotko here. This guy is 10-5 in the UFC, so an extremely impressive, set of numbers there in the middleweight division. But he's scored two knockdowns in 15 fights. 41% striking accuracy, lands less than 3 a minute, 57% striking defense, while Meerschaert, is absorbing about 0.3 more significant strikes per minute than he lands. He's a little more accurate, a little more powerful than Jotko, but he's been knocked down 3 times in 15 fights, while for Jotko, it looks like it's only 2 times. So, on the feet, it's going to be close, but that's where Jotko wins a lot of minutes, is on the feet, up against the cage, just kind of grinding people out. Jotko shows 83.5% takedown defense over a 15-fight sample size, but he has been controlled for 22% of his UFC career. And really, Meerschaert needs about 10 seconds of control time, or 10 seconds of you controlling him, to potentially get you in a web and finish you. Yeah, I'm probably staying away from this one. When we look at the strength of schedule, it's very similar. Maybe a little bit better wins for Jotko. Maybe a little bit better overall for Meerschaert. The losses, very similar in the strength of schedule. Meerschaert more experienced. The tail of the tape numbers are almost identical. It's just that, if you think Meerschaert might be able to pull guard here and get Jotko into a ton of trouble on the ground. You don't want to be anywhere near this guy, Meerschaert. You'd rather it be a striking match, because if he gets you to the ground, man, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, I think he's going to have to pull guard. This is such a weird fight here. We take a look at the odds, and Jotko is a favorite. He opened up plus 105. He's now minus 170. Meerschaert opened up minus 125. He's plus 145. Meerschaert's one of those guys where he's, a dog a lot, but you can never count this guy out. On the feet, he's shown improvements. He's shown power. And if this fight hits the mat in any type of way, whether it is him getting Jotko down, which I don't really expect, or him pulling guard and Jotko engaging, which I don't really expect as well. But if this fight hits the mat in any type of way, he's going to be live for that sub. And then just on the feet, it's going to be close. Jotko goes to a ton of close fights. So I don't know. I'm a big Jotko hater, but I think I'll pick him here. But in terms of a bet, I'm kind of thinking the finish only for Meerschaert could be something to look at. He is a decent-sized dog, so maybe get it at good odds, because I think if there is a finish in this fight, it's more likely to come from the guy with a 94% finish rate rather than the guy with a 31% finish rate, which is actually the worst finish rate on the card. So I like the finish only potentially for Meerschaert. I'm hoping they're kind of sleeping on that one, but other than that, it's gonna be a pass for me. The over/under is set at over/under set at 1.5 rounds. Interesting. That got pounded today. It opened up minus 115. It's currently minus 205. The under 1.5 rounds, minus 115, and is currently plus 165. Finisher in Meerschaert, decisionator in Jotko. Something's got to give. If you like the under, you probably like Meerschaert. If you like the over, you most definitely like Jotko.
Yeah, and Jotko is really a master of making other people fight his fight. He shouldn't be 10-5 when you look at these statistics. He hasn't done anything, he's given up as many takedowns as he's gotten. He gets 1.15 takedowns per 15 minutes and allows 1. He lands 2.92 significant strikes a minute, absorbs 2.24. There's not fantastic power. There's not a lot of control time, but he wins 10 out of 15 fights at the UFC level. So it's really odd. How does he do it? He gets you to fight his fight. And so he's probably going to keep this standing. He's probably going to figure out ways just to frustrate Gerald. And if he has his way, he'll probably win a very close decision at the end of the day. But Meerschaert is so dangerous. Yeah, man. I think it's either Meerschaert inside the distance or Jotko by decision. And like you said, Brady, keeping an eye on that finish only prop for Meerschaert. If we can find that around close to even money, man. Oh,
Yes.
boy. I might be unloading on that shit.
Give me it. Yeah, I do like that a lot. We got F. Carrillo, always a huge supporter here. Jordan and Parsons, maybe some change. And shout out to the best, Unc and B. Dukes. Thank you a ton. Carrillo, you're always in here week in and week out supporting. Do appreciate you a ton. But yeah, interesting fight, weird fight. But yeah, that finish only is going to be something to look out for. But we will move on to the next fight here. We have 3 left. We have Darren Elkins going against Tristan Connelly. Another weird fight. We have Elkins, who is now 37 years old. He's 5'10", with a 71-inch reach, going against Tristan Connelly, who is 36 years old, 5'10", with a 68-inch reach. And I don't know about you, Weezy, but I was not able to find a lot of tape out there on Tristan Connelly. I think I was able to watch maybe 3 or 4 fights on him. One of those fights being the Michel Pereira fight, which you cannot really look into a ton because that fight was at 170 pounds. He did take it on short notice, and he actually he won that fight, right?
He won that fight. Yeah, he did. He did. But he lost the walkout. I mean, because Michel Pereira's dance routine was absolutely fantastic. And I mean, you know, I know we don't get points for walkouts, but God damn it, we should. And if we did, that would have been 30-27 Pereira. But unfortunately, he gassed out from what was just a dance routine that you don't want to miss.
Yeah, he was like gassed out after the first round, or like during the first round. It was like late first round. Michel Pereira was gassed out. Yeah, that was, you can't really look into that fight that much. He did make his return like 2 years later against Pat Sabatini, cutting down from 170 to 145, and this fight's also 145. So he got dominated for the most part against Pat Sabatini. Sabatini took him down in the first and second round, and then Sabatini kind of took the third round off a little bit, but I don't know, man. We have Elkins, who they call him the damage for a reason. This guy has taken, you know, an unbelievable amount of damage, and it's been starting to show. But he's still able to go out there and, you know, beat these lower level guys like a Derek Minner, like Eduardo Garagori, and I kind of feel like Tristan Connelly falls into that category of lower level guys, honestly. So I don't know. This is a fight I just can't touch. We have Elkins 2-3 in his last 5 fights. Connelly 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Connelly very inactive as well. You know, win against Michel Pereira, which maybe people are looking at that and thinking, oh, he beat Michel Pereira, he should beat Elkins here. But that was just kind of a weird fight where Pereira gassed out in a couple minutes. I don't know. I don't know what to do with this fight. It's a very tricky one, but I kind of lean Elkins just based off of he's fought the much better competition. It's not even close. He's the more experienced fighter. I think this fight is primarily going to play out on the mat. I like Elkins' wrestling. I like his willingness to wrestle. I like his grappling, but 37 years old, 145 pounds, tons of damage on him, tons of fight years as well. It's a sketchy fight, Weezy.
Yeah, and Kelly Garvey is saying it in the chat right now. Darren Elkins is an Indiana legend. He does not suck. He is a warrior. And boy, those are 3 sentences that are all on point. Yeah. From Portage, Indiana, right around the corner from Chicago, Illinois. Brady, stand up, Portage, Indiana. One of your best high school wrestlers to ever compete downstate there was Darren Elkins. The guy's been doing it forever. And, you know, one of the first things that you expect to see when you look at this fight is, holy shit, is he like 10 years older than Connelly? Is he 15 years older than Connelly? No, man. Darren Elkins is only 1 year older than Tristan Connelly. It's just that, you know, in Elkins' 15-year career, he's had 36 fights. So he's fighting over twice a year, while Tristan Connelly in a 12-year career has 21 fights. So he's fighting less than 2 times a year. Elkins has just been doing this forever. 23 more UFC fights, 250 more minutes in the UFC cage, and he's fought everybody, man. I mean, I think his first or second UFC fight was against Charles Oliveira, and that was Oliveira making his debut. So we got a good finish rate here at 93% for Tristan Connelly and 14 wins, and a 54% finish rate for Elkins in 26 professional wins. Connelly's been finished in 2 of 7 losses. Darren Elkins has been finished in half of his 10 losses. On the feet, I don't know what we're going to see here. Elkins' fights are taking place in control time positions over a massive sample size over half the time. And Connelly, About 2/3 of the time over a 2-fight sample size, his fights are taking place in control time positions. He really got blanketed by Pat Sabatini, and he had some success against Michel Pereira after Pereira gassed out. But I think Pereira was kind of just expecting to get this dude out of there in the first round. And he's a durable guy. He's only been finished in 2 of 7 pro losses. So once he didn't go away, I think it became a little more difficult. In terms of the wrestling, Connelly is a guy who has won a lot of minutes with his wrestling on the regional scene. It's his wrestling and his grappling is the strong part of his game. But with Elkins, you've got a UFC level wrestler here who's been doing it his whole life. 36% control time over a 25 fight sample size, 33% takedown accuracy, averaging 2.65 takedowns for 15 minutes, 1.14 submission attempts for 15 minutes. He's been controlled 15% of his UFC career. So, not the most efficient grappler, to be honest with you, but he's, right in the meaty part of the curve, while Tristan Connelly, did lose a ton of minutes to Sabatini in the wrestling and the grappling. So there's going to be a path there for Elkins. And in addition to that, Connelly, we're seeing some good records out of Pereira and Sabatini, the guys that he's fought, but Elkins is fighting some guys that are former champions and stuff like that. So the strength of schedule is definitely way more experienced competition for Elkins, way better competition over the aggregate. So I like Elkins wrestling. I like the strength of schedule. I like the fact that he's got a 3-inch reach advantage and is only 1 year older, the more active fighter, and the guy who's fought the way better brand of competition here. So I got to go with Elkins.
Yeah, lots of reasons to like Elkins, right? But there's also lots of reasons why I do not want to bet this fight. Yeah, I just don't know enough about Connelly. Like, in terms of the striking, we don't really see much of Connelly in the striking. Did not see a ton of it in the Pereira fight, and didn't see a ton of it at all in the Sabatini fight. And there's also one other fight out there that you can watch on Connelly. And there wasn't much striking in that fight as well. So, yeah, I think this fight primarily does play out on the mat. And yeah, give me the more experienced guy. And Darren Elkins fought the much better competition. I like his wrestling. I like his grappling. But I do not like the 37 years of old age there. But yeah, Connelly's not much younger. So let's see what the line is. Looks like Elkins is the favorite. He opened up minus 150. He's now minus 140. And then Connelly opened up plus 130. He's now plus 120. I kind of feel like if the Cub-Swanson fight did not happen, Weezy, I kind of feel like Elkins would be a much bigger favorite here.
Yeah, and I mean, dude, you watch Cub Swanson in that fight, he was out for blood. And it was a bad matchup. That was a bad matchup for Darren Elkins, because Cub Swanson's much better on the feet than he is. And here's a guy who's been stopping takedowns at a pretty good clip for his whole career. So it was just, and Elkins is the kind of guy who sometimes you need to hurt him first before he gets into his, you got to piss him off. And this was a case where, he just didn't seem to give Elkins an inch. So, yeah, I see why he's not as big of a favorite this time. But it's hard to find reasons to like Connelly here. There's a lot going against him.
Yeah, and Blake saying I think Pereira beats Connelly now. Yeah, if they ever run it back, Connelly, Pereira too. Yeah, Pereira should smash things. As long as he's not dance for 20 minutes and do backflips all day, he should smash Connelly if they do fight again, but that's not going to happen. But
yeah, I don't think anyone's begging for that mismatch, and like Connelly took that fight on 48 hours notice or some shit too, so I think Pereira was just like, I am going to smash this guy. He's a 145er, taking it on less than 48 hours notice. Like, we're in completely different weight classes. And so he just, he was like trying to announce himself to the UFC. And he's like, look, not only am I going to kick this guy's ass, but wait until you see me dance, and did we see him dance.
Oh, yeah.
And then lose a fight that he was like, should have. Dude, if that fight happened today, right, this week, Pereira would have went off at like minus 2,000 like fucking Romanov did, so it would have been one of the worst parlay busters of all time.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, unfortunately we won't get to see that fight, but that fight was crazy there. All right, so we have 2 fights left, and I'm very excited for this next one, Weezy, because it is indeed the people's main event, the co-main event. We have Jake Collier going against Andrei Arlovski. Cannot wait to break this down, Weezy. We have Collier, who is 33 years old, 6'3" with a 78-inch reach. Andrei Arlovski, 43 years old, 6'3" with a 77-inch reach. We have Collier, who is 10 years younger, same height, and then Collier is going to have a 1-inch reach advantage. Collier is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. My God. He's 3-2 in his last 5 fights. A decision win against Marcel Fortuna, a knockout loss in his debut at heavyweight against Tom Aspinall. He came back after a long layoff, and everybody was like, "Hey, who's this guy? This guy's not Jake Collier." Aspinall starched him in the first round. Then he won a decision against Fat Volante. After that, he lost a decision to Carlos Felipe, and then won a submission against Chase Sherman. As far as Andrei Arlovski, 4-1 in his last 5 fights, decision win against Tanner Boser, submission lost against Tom Aspinall, Chase Sherman decision win, Carlos Felipe decision win, and then a decision win against Jared Vandera. So although this is I don't know, man, like this fight, it's a tough fight to call it. This is going to be one of the greasier fights on the card. We have Collier, who is going to have some advantages. I like Collier. He's going to be 10 years younger. I think that's huge. We have Arlovski, who's 43, which makes him one of the oldest fighters in the UFC. So Collier is going to be younger. On top of that, Collier throws a ton of volume. This guy, I don't know, he comes in there and then throws a lot. Like in his fight against Carlos Felipe, he actually outlanded Felipe by a ton and lost that fight. I want to get the exact number. So Collier lands 130 significant strikes in that Felipe fight, right? And then against Jean Volante, he lands 123 significant strikes. We do not see that volume. And Bootsy making an appearance is liking the dog, which the dog, by the way, spoiler alert, I believe is Fat Collier. So wow. Bootsy liking Collier there. We got to respect Bootsy after his Mike Jackson pick. But I don't know. It's a tough fight, Bootsy. We have Collier, who is going to be younger. We have Collier, who's going to have the volume advantage, but we have Arlovski, who is, has that veteran savvy. Arlovski's probably having the power advantage. He's going to have the cardio advantage. And I was really close to actually pulling the trigger on Jake Collier there, Weezy, and you would have to call the orderlies on me. But what kind of threw me off and took me off of betting Collier was the fact that he went in there against, it was against Volante. He's looking up at the clock with in the second round, and he's looking at the clock in the third round. And there's the same thing in the Felipe fight. He was looking up at the clock, and this guy gets so tired. He has about 7.5 minutes of gas. And, when he is tired, he is still throwing a ton of volume. It doesn't look like it's landing hard, and it's a very bad look for the judges as well. He just looks so tired. So this is how I think it plays out. It's going to be very close. It's going to go to decision, like every single Andrei Arlovski fight has been in the last couple of years, right? You're going to have Collier, who's probably going to outland him every single round, but you're also going to have Collier, who's going to look very, very tired. You're going to have Collier, who's going to be landing a lot of volume, but not with a ton of power. I don't know. I think it goes to decision. I think it goes to split decision. Like Arlovski in his last fight went to split decision with Jared Vandera. Not the best look in the world, but it's a close fight. And Weezy, I cannot wait to hear you break this down.
Yeah, I mean, I think you did a pretty good job breaking it down, man. I mean, this is gonna be close, right? I mean, Fat Collier is 10 years younger. You gotta like that. He's got a 1-inch reach advantage, but obviously Arlovski, 36 more professional fights, 340 more minutes in the pro cage, twice as long of a pro career. And Fat Collier has been doing this 11 and a half years, so 23 years for Andrei Arlovski. I mean, this guy was fighting before you were even in kindergarten, for Christ's sake, I mean, he's been around forever. 27 more UFC fights, 260 more minutes in the UFC cage. So, Arlovski relies more on his power. Fat Collier has actually got a 31% win rate by submission, which is kind of surprising, because I was shocked to see him submit Chase Sherman. We just hadn't seen Collier going out there and getting takedowns. Prior to that fight, he had only had 3 takedowns in 9 UFC fights. So to see Fat Collier get that takedown, and then not only that, do really well on the ground, for instance, if you're on the ground and you were to get trapped under a 260-pound slab of marble, right, which was just flat, you could just kind of turn it, and you could potentially get out from underneath that weight. Now, if you take that same kind of weight and you just put it in human fat on top of you, right? What happens, Brady, is it takes the shape of your body and it allows you not to be able to move. So it was really weird to see Collier grapple better due to the fact that he's obese now, because like now when he gets that top position, you're not going anywhere because that fat will just drown you, and it takes the shape of your body when he's on top. So Arlovski, I think it's really important to see that he's got 80% takedown defense over 37 UFC fights. So he's going to need to keep this on the feet, because he can kind of make guys fight his fight now at this stage of his career. He's really smart. He's, this will be, if this fight goes to decision, this will be over 500 minutes of his life, that he's spent in the pro cage. So he's been around. He's been doing this forever. He probably can find a way to win minutes on the feet here against Fat Collier. But look, Arlovski at this point has done a great job of just lengthening his career, showing up and winning close fights, and getting paid a ton of money to do it. So I think Collier would like to be in that place. The strength of schedule, unfortunately, isn't really close. Arlovski's better everywhere there. He's the far more experienced mixed martial artist, and he probably should wind up winning this fight by decision. I don't want to be too over the moon about the recent performances of Fat Collier, even though it's against Fat Volante, Carlos Felipe, who's been caught doing steroids twice, and then Chase Sherman, So I think we kind of got to go with Arlovski here to get the win over Fat Collier.
Yeah, if Collier had conditioning, I would bet him. I love the volume from Collier. I love it, but the conditioning is just so bad. Like he has about 6.5, 7.5 minutes at best, and then he just looks tired, exhausted. It's just not a good look. So yeah, it's gonna go to decision. It's gonna be greasy. It's gonna be probably a split decision. We see that Andrei Arlovski opened up -190. He's currently -145. Collier opened up +165. He is currently +125. And you do not typically see that, or this at heavyweight. We have the over 2.5 set at 2.5 rounds, and it is juiced to over 2.5 rounds, -205. The under 2.5 is +165. And yeah, this is more than likely going to decision. Andrei Arlovski has not had a finish in a very long time. I can't remember, like maybe 2015, I think, is the last decision or finish win of Andrei Arlovski. And on top of that, you have Collier, who just does not have much power. So I think it goes to decision, but yeah, -205 for an over and heavyweight fight, a greasy heavyweight fight, is probably a little bit too much, right?
Yeah, let's find that last finish win for Arlovski.
I want to say Brown.
Oh what's that?
Was it Brown back in 20?
Travis Brown back in 2015, dude. 7 years ago, man. 7 years ago.
Bootsy loving Collier.
Yeah, and you know what's funny is how close was Brown to finishing him in that fight. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was a great fight. That was the last time we really saw him in a knockdown, drag-out war. Yeah. Everything else has really just been him grinding out decision wins. Junior Albini, Stefan Struve, Frank Mir, Rothwell, Linz, Bozer, Sherman, Felipe, and Vandera. So, yeah, I think maybe he gets it done here, but God, I don't think I'm going to have my money anywhere near this fight, dude.
I don't know how you could. I mean, this is about as 1-800 gambler as you can get. It's the greasiest fight on the card, and it's the co-main event, which should be awesome.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's the co-main, but this main is a great one, dude.
Yeah, this main event's awesome. We'll talk about it now. So before we get into this main event, we have 183 of you. Thank you guys for hanging out, especially on a card like this where it's not so great, but like Weezy says, like if we can make some money, it's going to be a fun card. Me, Weezy, will be going live on the MMA Engine tomorrow to do a main event deep dive. We'll break everything down. We'll go into detail. We'll talk about it from a betting perspective. So make sure you check us out on the MMA Engine. That's going to be tomorrow. But yeah, we have Marlon Vera going against Rob Font. We have Rob Font, who is 34 years old, 5'8" with a 71-inch reach. We have Marlon Vera, who's 29 years old, 5'8" with a 70-inch reach. Rob Font, 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Decision win against Sergio Pettis, a decision win against Ricky Simone, a knockout win against Marlon Moraes, a decision win against Cody Garbrandt, and a decision loss against Jose Aldo. As far as Marlon Vera, he has 3-2 in his last 5 fights, a decision loss against Song Yadong, a knockout win against Sean O'Malley, decision loss against Jose Aldo, a decision win against Davey Grant, and then a knockout win against Frankie Edgar. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this fight because we know Marlon Vera, we know how he fights. So the first round, he kind of takes it off. I think he's lost like the majority of his first rounds outside of like the O'Malley. I think he even lost the first round against Davey Grant. I know he lost against Edgar. But this is a guy that gets better as the fight goes on. The second round, he starts, turning it on, waking up a little bit. And then the third round, Marlon Vera is a complete savage monster that you do not want to be in there with. And I'm curious to see, what is fourth round Marlon Vera going to look like? What is fifth round Marlon Vera going to look like? It should be very, very fun there to see what it's going to look like if it does get extended. Rob Font, I really like this guy's striking. This guy throws a ton of volume. His striking's very crisp. I think he's going to be the better striker here, but I don't know. It's a really competitive fight here. You got to believe you have Marlon Vera who's going to want to drag this into an absolute war, and you're gonna have Rob Font who wants to kind of keep it at range, go technique for technique with Marlon Vera. But I think that's going to be pretty tough. I think they're going to get into a war. They're going to get into a brawl, and you got to think that favors Marlon Vera. But skill for skill, I think Rob Font's the more skilled fighter. Just Marlon Vera is so dangerous, and you cannot count this guy out in a 3-round fight, let alone a 5-round fight. So it should be a very fun main event, Weezy. What do you like in here?
Yeah, I mean, you look at these numbers and they're very similar, right? They're, Vera's 5 years younger, but they're similar in height, they're similar in reach, they're similar in pro fights, similar in pro cage time, similar in length of pro career. That's only 6 months difference. Vera, 5 more UFC fights and 50 more minutes in the UFC cage. So a little bit of an experience edge there for Vera. And Vera's the better finisher with an 83% finish rate in 18 pro wins. So I believe that would be 15 wins out of 18 inside the distance. And he's got 8 of them by submission, 7 of them by knockout. So he's an equal opportunity finisher, while Font has 42% by knockout, 21% by sub. And in these guys' 12 combined losses, only one of them has been inside the distance. So that's very interesting. These guys are both incredibly durable. Marlon Vera, you're not finishing this dude unless you bring a shovel into the cage with you. And Rob Font's only been finished once, and it was by submission. So he's got a chin too. I mean, you're talking about a guy who in 13 UFC fights has been knocked down twice. So he's very tough. And how about Marlon Vera? 18 UFC fights, dude. He's never been knocked down. So look, the durability of both of these guys is not in question at all. I mean, like, these guys are incredibly durable. But you mentioned it. What is 5-round Marlon Vera going to look like? Because I think this could be one of the mythical creatures going forward, because he's a guy who needs those 4th and 5th rounds. You got to figure in order to be at his best, because he is a slow starter. He does work his way into fights. But God damn it, if every fucking time, even when he loses Brady first rounds, he just comes back in the second like a goddamn savage. He never goes away. I mean, how can you not be a fan of this dude? I mean, both of these guys, really, they're great fighters. Font is probably going to have the striking advantage here. He's going to be working that jab. He's going to be winning minutes on the feet. We see him landing more significant strikes per minute than he absorbs by like 2.09, while Vera eats more than he lands. He lands 4.08, eats 4.27. Font is going to be more defensively responsible on the feet with a 60% striking defense, while it's only 50% for Vera. So as long as this fight is on the feet, Font should be the minute winner. But, at the same time, you can expect Marlon Vera to be the moment winner because he lands big shots. Both of these guys showing some decent power numbers. But in the grappling, we're going to see that Marlon Vera's fights are taking place in control time positions for or against about 40% of the time, while for Font, it's about 27% of the time. So Vera has been in fights that, get to the grappling about 4 out of every 10 seconds, while for, Font, it's less than 3 out of every 10 seconds. So maybe we might expect Vera to be the more confident grappler here. He tries half the amount of takedown attempts that his opponents do, and he gets out-controlled by about a 2-to-1 ratio. Font has had 40 takedowns attempted against him. He's only attempted 30. He's won 10% in control time, but allowed 17.5% control time against. And you look at that takedown defense at only 55% for Rob Font. It's just as easy to picture Font winning minutes on the feet as it is Vera winning minutes on the ground here. And we do know that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is what Vera's got him to the UFC. This guy is clearly a very talented submission artist. He's got more submission wins than he does KO wins. I can't wait to see the pace that this fight takes by about round 2, round 3. I think it's going to be one of the best main events of the year. I think it's going to be attritional. There's probably going to be a lot of blood. And, man, I think Marlon Vera is going to get the job done here, dude. I'm really, really excited to see Marlon get to work for a full 25 minutes here, man.
Because I'm always looking forward to what Marlon Vera is going to show up in that third round. Like Marlon Vera in the 4th and 5th round is going to be something crazy. So yeah, I think, I agree with what you said. I think Rob Font is going to be the minute winner on the feet, but I feel like Marlon Vera is going to be the moment winner. I mean, this guy, Marlon Vera, hits like an absolute truck. This guy has a chin on him. Like you said, you need a shovel or a baseball bat to knock him down. I don't think he's ever going to get knocked down. This guy's chin is unreal. And on top of that, his combinations, like I remember watching the Davy Grant fight where Marlon Vera landed a 4 elbow combination. I've never seen anything like it. He was like back to back to back to back elbows. One of them cutting open Davy Grant really bad. Like this guy's no joke on the feet. And on top of that, like if you're Marlon Vera, why not try to take down Rob Font, who is stuffing takedowns about half the time? If Vera can get on top of Rob Font, I do think he'd have some success. Vera, very dangerous on the mat. Jose Aldo was able to get down Rob Font, control him for 9 minutes in that last fight. And, that Jose Aldo fight was very interesting as you take a look at it from like a number standpoint. And Rob Font outlands Jose Aldo 149-86, but it is actually Jose Aldo that wins 50-45 on 2 out of 3 of the judges' scorecards. So although Rob Font is outlanding Jose Aldo in terms of the numbers, it is Aldo that is having those bigger moments, knocking down Rob Font twice, hurting Rob Font. And I feel like it could kind of play out similar here. I feel like Rob Font, in terms of the numbers, probably outlands Marlon Vera on the feet, but the bigger moments is going to be coming from Marlon Vera, whether it's on the feet or on the mat. And Marlon Vera is going to turn it up as the fight goes on. And I feel like, although Rob Font is very tough and durable, I feel like a Marlon Vera, like a late finish, is definitely on the table here. So, I like Marlon Vera as well. And he's actually a dog here, which I guess it does make sense because, like we're talking about, Font should be the minute winner on the feet. I love the volume. I love the striking. Marlon Vera is going to be at a striking disadvantage, but I just feel like it's going to be in a war. We're in the small cage, and I feel like that favors Vera here. So Rob Font opens up -175. He's currently -128. Marlon Vera opened up +150. He's currently +108. The over-under set at 4.5 rounds. The over 4.5 rounds is -150, and the under 4.5 rounds is +120. So a play I was talking to you about, and I'm sure they're going to be all over it, but I think the finish only for Marlon Vera could be a pretty solid look. You have Marlon Vera, who has an 86% finish rate, finishing the majority of his fights outside of 2 in the UFC. And you have Rob Font, who, good finisher, don't get me wrong, but I just don't really see anybody finishing Marlon Vera anytime soon. So I think the finish only for Marlon Vera is a good look. I think Marlon Vera as an underdog is not a terrible look. And I think like Marlon Vera, 3, 4, 5 round sprinkles could be something to look at. This guy's no joke the later the fight goes.
Yeah, dude, and you look at the strength of schedule numbers. I mean, Font's a little bit better on the ratio and the total fights in the overall, and a little bit better in the wins, and a little bit better in the losses. But I mean, like, look, they're both fighting top-notch competition here. And the key about this fight is that it's a 5-round fight. Marlon Vera has finished 10 of his 12 UFC wins inside the distance. And one of those ones that went to decision was that Davy Grant fight. And Vera was torturing him for the entire 3rd round. If Grant wasn't just stupid tough, there's no way that fight doesn't get finished. I don't even remember who the other guy he beat by decision was, but the guy probably has a brick for a head. I think fighting Marlon Vera in the 4th round in the UFC is going to be a fucking nightmare.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I cannot wait to see it, Weezy. It's gonna be great.
Absolutely, this is a great main event. Not the best card, like I said, but This main event is going to be violent, man, and I cannot wait to see it.
Yes, sir. Yeah, not the best card. I mean, it's hard to get excited for Collier, Arlovski. It's hard to get excited for, Mazani Young. But there's some good fights. I mean, fights, can't complain. Looking forward to it as always. So, yeah, we did it. We broke it down we have 12 fights this week. I think 12 fights this week because Romanov and Sherman are back on the card. Yeah, it should be fun. And then next week we have UFC 274, which is going to be a complete banger. This card, last 2 weeks have been kind of lower level in terms of the name value, but we get a banger of a card next week. So look forward to that. Weezy, let everybody know where they can find you, what you have going on throughout the week here.
Yeah, you can find me on my YouTube channel, which is just called Uncle Weezy. Every Tuesday night, I do a full card breakdown called Just a Tip with Uncle Weezy. We break down all the fights on the card, finish with Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week. You can always find me on Pub Sports Radio every Sunday for Stat Diggers, every Wednesday for the DFS show, and most Saturdays for the watch along with Boston Nick and MMA Locker Room and the guys. And you can also find me on the MMA Engine YouTube channel. I'll be going live for a Balls Deep breakdown on either Monday night or Wednesday night on that channel. And we do Probability every Thursday. It's a really great show, a data-driven look at finding value in the over-under and the fight goes and the fight doesn't go lines. Go check out that MMA Engine YouTube channel if you haven't already subscribed there. We got some fantastic content coming up for you in the future. Thank each and every one of you guys for hanging out on a Sunday night on Pub Sports Radio with Brady and I. And let's stack cash tickets like flapjacks for UFC Vegas 53.
Let's do it. Yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter, DFS_numbers, Instagram, DFS by the numbers. My full card breakdown prediction video will be out sometime tomorrow. Other than that, catch me here on Pub Sports. Catch me on the MMA Engine. We'll be live on there tomorrow as well. Leave a like, subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio. Always do appreciate you guys hanging out in the chat, leaving the likes, leaving the comments. Does mean a lot. And yeah, good luck. Let's keep making some money, guys. We'll talk to you very soon. See you guys.